Do you want to know why it seems so easy for some people to sound like a native speaker in their target languages? I will offer you some insights in this video that will greatly improve the way you speak foreign languages. Okay, let's dive right in. The first very important topic to discuss is language ego permeability. Okay, I know it sounds a bit complicated to those new to applied linguistics, but let me explain to you what it is and why it is important if we want to achieve a native-like accent and speech habits in our target languages. First, the word ego, pronounced ego in Greek, in which it simply means I or me. But in English, ego is your inner sense of self or identity. It is the part of your mind that helps you understand who you are and how you relate to the world around you. And permeability is how easily something allows something else, such as liquid or gas, flow through it. So put them together and we have language ego permeability. It can be simply understood as your willingness to temporarily let go of your native language and culture and adopt a new identity, accent, speech habits, and even cultural norms associated with the target language when using it. For example, concerning cultural norms, I grew up in Florida in the U.S., where individualism is highly valued. But when I immigrated to Japan at age 25, I had to adapt to the Japanese collectivist culture, letting go of my individualistic mindset. In Japan, the hierarchical society is strongly reflected in the Japanese language. Unlike English, Japanese has multiple pronouns for you and I, and 3 levels of speech based on age and social position, leading to many variations of word choices and verb conjugations to express the appropriate level of politeness. For example, here is how you ask someone to sit down based on the level of politeness and formality. Very casual, suware. Casual, suwatte. Polite neutral, suwatte kudasai. Polite formal, o suware kudasai. Very formal, o kake ni natte kudasai. As you see, the longer it is, the more polite it is. So what influences our language ego permeability? The first very important factor is your motivation to learn that language and become part of that community. From 1979 to 1981, I studied in graduate school in Poznań, Poland. Polish sounded so beautiful to me, and I really loved the culture. It fascinated me, which made me highly motivated to speak and act like a Pole and to become part of the Polish community. I even challenged myself to see how long I could speak to someone I just met in Polish without them wondering whether I was Polish or not. Your cultural background is also very important. Some cultures highly value multilingualism, thus promoting language ego permeability. In contrast, other cultures may prefer everyone to speak just one dominant language. I just spent 2 weeks on a beautiful small island in Colombia called Providencia in the Caribbean. The island is mainly populated by Riazols, an Afro-Caribbean ethnic group who speak an English-based Creole. Let's have a listen to see if you can understand. And what is your name?
Matthew Whittier.
Okay, and what language are you speaking to me now?
This is Creole from Providence.
I see. Is it different than Creole from Jamaica?
Yes, a different one.
How?
Because here we don't talk so much like with bad word, but Jamaica them talk with bad.
So you're politer here.
Yes, yes.
I see. Very similar to English, right? However, Providencia belongs to Colombia, so in school, everyone studies Spanish and standard English. So many of the people I met there were naturally trilingual and were happy to speak any of those 3 languages. And I must say, I was really impressed by Andres, a young Rizal working on the dive boat. He just loves to learn languages, and he takes every opportunity to practice with tourists. His Portuguese is muito bom. Andres, if you're watching this, I'm very proud of you. In contrast, in Japan, even though there are many language schools teaching English, most Japanese have low language permeability due to Japanese society and culture. It is common for kikoku shijo, a term that refers to children who have lived abroad and returned back to Japan, to hide their English language abilities. From my experience, I think this is due to some of the following reasons. First of all, there's social pressure, the fear of standing out, or the desire to maintain harmony, not wanting their peers to feel less able. And also, we shouldn't forget the importance of previous language learning experiences. People who have had positive language learning experiences in the past may be more willing to embrace a new language and culture, while those who have had negative experiences might be more resistant to do so. Okay, story time. In 1975, I met a nice guy named Pedro while participating in an intensive Spanish language course at Universidad de los Andes in Bogota, Colombia. Pedro was the son of immigrants from Cuba, and he told me while growing up in Miami, he only spoke Spanish from birth to age 6. So now you might be wondering, what was he doing there at the Spanish course with me? I mean, come on. He spoke only Spanish for the first 6 years of his life. Well, what happened is, when he entered primary school, it was really a traumatic experience. He couldn't understand anything, couldn't understand the teachers, his classmates. The poor guy was in a terrible situation, a great shock to him. Can you imagine how alienated and excluded he must have felt? Unfortunately, as a side effect of adapting to an English-speaking community, Pedro totally rejected his Cuban heritage and speaking Spanish. He spent the rest of his youth just speaking English until he decided he wanted to learn Spanish again, and then came to Colombia to participate in this intensive course. But it was quite surprising because he had the strongest non-native accent among the students. And he said, well, it's due to a psychological barrier that was created from that traumatic experience. Over the years, I have noticed similar psychological barriers among students trying to learn their heritage language again. Fortunately, whenever I learn a language well, I usually get very positive reactions. For example, my Thai got very good while lecturing at Chulalongkorn University for 3 months a year over a period of 12 years. I even wrote a book about Japanese companies in Thailand in Thai. Sometimes locals would ask me why I could speak Thai so well, and I would answer, Chatileo ben kon Thai, which means, in my previous lifetime, I was Thai. Usually I would get a big laugh, but one time at a hotel, 2 receptionists believed me, and they kept asking me questions about my previous lifetime. The same also often happens to me in Nepal when I speak Nepali, and so I answer the same way. Ogilo jibama mo Nepali tie. These positive experiences encourage me to try to achieve a native-like accent when learning new languages. So now you can see how our past language learning experiences can affect our willingness and ability to embrace new languages and cultures. And do you know that empathy plays a huge role in achieving a native-like accent? A guy named Guiora and his fellow researchers did a study on the effect of alcohol on the pronunciation of students learning Thai. And can you guess what they found out? The results showed that the group that consumed a little bit of alcohol did significantly better than the group that did not. They speculated that alcohol most likely reduces students' anxiety and inhibitions, allowing them to speak more freely and confidently. Interesting, right? Thereafter, they designed another study using a tranquilizer called Valium. The drug has a very calming and relaxing effect. It also appeared to increase their sensitivity or empathy towards the native Thai speaker in the experiment, and their pronunciation greatly improved. So the lesson we can learn here is that the feeling of greater emotional closeness to native speakers can increase our willingness and ability to imitate their accent and speech habits. Have you ever wondered why many people think that children learn foreign languages easier and faster than adults? Let me explain why that impression is a mistake. As we mature, we tend to develop a more fixed identity, and this can make adult learners more self-conscious. We might be afraid of making mistakes or worry that people are judging us, while younger learners haven't lived that long yet, right? So it's easier for them to be more flexible in modifying or expanding their identity. So people with high language ego permeability do not feel that their native language identity is threatened by the acquisition and use of additional languages. On the other hand, people with low language ego permeability often say it just doesn't feel right to imitate native speakers of their target language. And here are some ways to increase our language ego permeability. You might have heard about the shadowing technique. Okay, so pick a role model. It can be a celebrity crush or just someone whose accent you really like and you can hear on some type of media over and over again. Pay very close attention to their pronunciation, accent, body language, speech habits, etc. Imitate them as best you can. You might even want to record yourself. And when you're speaking the target language in the future, have that person in mind. And if possible, get input from native speakers. Try doing some empathy exercises. Okay, let me explain. For example, I often imagine what it's like to be someone I see in my daily life, like on the train or standing in line somewhere. It's like a game for me. I'm curious about how they perceive and experience the world. I think this habit or trait makes it easier for me to become part of new linguistic and cultural communities. The more I identify with the native speakers of my target language, the easier it is to imitate their accent and body language. This identification is a form of empathy. Empathy and identity are closely related. I also find it interesting that when I'm comfortable imitating body language, it's much easier to get the accent right and speak correctly. Notice your emotions when you try to imitate a native speaker. That might sound a bit strange, right? But observe yourself and how you feel when you're practicing sounding like a native. Body language is an important part of communication. I mean no offense to French people, but when I first started studying French, I felt a bit uncomfortable imitating some French body language and facial expressions. For example, the stereotypical French Gaelic shrug. It is commonly a sign of indifference or disagreement, but it could mean, I don't know, it's not my fault, I doubt it, I don't agree, or I don't care. Raise your shoulders, hold your arms at the elbows with the palms out, stick out your lower lip and raise your eyebrows and say, woof. Okay, it wasn't easy to accept. But in order to sound and communicate like a native speaker, you have to train yourself and accept that's how it is and become more and more comfortable doing so. Next, cultivate an open-minded perspective towards other cultures. Avoid judgment and stereotypes and be willing to accept diverse perspectives. Build relationships with people with different cultural backgrounds. Exchange stories, share experiences, and actively listen to their viewpoints. Periodically reflect on your own cultural biases and preconceptions. This practice involves examining your own values, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations, and how they affect your perception of other cultures or individuals. For example, if you are from a culture where people prefer direct communication and expressing their opinion frankly, even if it's not in agreement with others, such as in North America, you may feel that people from cultures who use indirect communication in order to maintain harmony and not cause loss of face, such as in Indonesia or Thailand, are not being honest when they don't express their true feelings and opinions. Okay, I know it's easier said than done and requires a lot of hard work, but I believe by actively engaging in other cultures and languages with an open heart and mind and practicing empathy, you can for sure increase your language ego permeability. Learn more languages and immerse yourself in many new cultures, fostering a deeper appreciation of the richness of human diversity, and it will surely enrich your life. Yes, it is hard, but it is worth it. And if you are facing any problems or difficulties in your language learning journey, please share them in the comments. I'm creating this Polyglot Dreams channel with the hope of helping or at least inspiring more and more people pursuing their language learning dreams. And if you're curious about how I achieve my dreams of being able to communicate with over 70% of the world population using more than 30 languages, you can check out this video where I shared my tips to learn many languages. Thank you for listening.